Welcome to Shoot the Captain episode 5. And today's topic, at least for me, my topic that I want to bring to the table to you, Rob, is Resident Evil Village, which is also, I think, Resident Evil 8.
Yep.
Got recently released this Friday, actually. Today's the main day it comes out.
Gotta get
So
my hands on it.
it's getting good reviews. It's lighting up the social media world. Tall lady. Everyone wants to fuck the tall lady, vampiric lady. But I've noticed, at least from a lot of the reviews and a lot of the hearsay and scuttlebutt of the internet of how Resident Evil Village has been received. It's been received very, very well, and I love how the direction that the game is going. But I couldn't help but notice that, Resident Evil 7 was a return to form to the horror franchise, to the horror roots of what Resident Evil meant, right? Resident Evil 8 is a not departure, but it's leaning back to action again. And didn't we already go through all this before? You know what I'm saying? With Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6? Okay, let me just paint the picture. I wanted to talk about some of the sales figures for the last Resident Evil games. When I mean sales figures, I want to talk about the sales figure after Resident Evil 4, because I feel after Resident Evil 4, that's when that franchise changed, right?
That was a turning point.
It was a turning point for the franchise. So
it reinvented itself the first time.
Exactly. Okay, so Resident Evil 4 had sold 10.7 million units when it came out. Great fucking number. One of the best games of my high school years, honestly. I played it on the GameCube, played it on the PS4. Sorry, not PS4, PS2. And had a blast. Played it on every single difficulty mode. Tried to get the special guns. Do one gun challenges where you don't use anything else but the handgun. Right, just fun little things you would do back in high school, because guess what? We didn't have a lot of modes, but it was fun to play. But again, great entry in the series, because it was the first time that they had mixed. They had gone away from the tank controls, where it was static locations and you could actually move in a 3D environment,
right.
And it became a third-person shooter also, where you can point and shoot to the things you're looking at, right?
Yeah.
So again, it had reinvented itself,
also
went a little bit more actiony.
Yeah, the story also kind of deviated from the original. The stories kind of became more about those creatures.
It became about bioterrorism, or whatever you want to call
zombies.
it. Instead of zombies, now you had Spanish zombies, and then African zombies. I don't want to go into that, but Ouroboros and all these other stuff. It almost became a little bit anime, where it started escalating the situations and the dire needs of the world, so you could have bigger and better boss fights, or bigger and better worlds, right? So Resident Evil 4 had sold 10.7 million. RE5 sold 13.3 million after that. So again, great trajectory for the game. Especially Resident Evil 5 ended up being such a great co-op experience. I had a great time with Resident Evil 5, but was it scary? I don't think it was.
No, it was fun.
It was fun though.
It was fun.
It had horror elements, but it was not scary.
Yeah.
RE4 had that creepiness, had that creepy vibe.
It was genuinely frightening.
Exactly.
It was genuinely frightening.
But it also had great moments of action too.
Yeah.
Where it was a good mixture of both. RE5 took it the direction of the action route and made it less creepy, less horror, but still a great game to play. You still have all these amazing boss fights and things like that.
Do you think that had to do with the co-op experience? Do you think that maybe the co-op experience, or the opposite, being alone? Because I know part of Resident Evil 4, you play it with the girl.
Right. You have to protect her. She's gonna do something.
She's the tails to your Sonic.
Right.
And but a lot of the game you play it as single player. You're by yourself. You don't have a partner. So I'm wondering if that has any contribution to the feeling. There's definitely more action in 5.
Yeah, definitely more.
But if the loneliness and the feeling, like you're isolated and that stuff, if that helped with the horror elements, maybe having a partner didn't make it as scary.
I think you're right. Having a partner didn't make it as scary. Even if you played by yourself and you had your AI Shiva, I think that was her name.
Yeah, they were formidable.
They were formidable. The freaking Chris would do you did a 3-hit combo and then do a haymaker and things like that. You had a lot more options and tools and weapons to use. When in Resident Evil 4, you slowly build up an arsenal. You don't start off with the kind of assault rifle shotgun in the beginning.
You just have your handgun.
Yeah, you have your handgun and you use that for a while until you find your first shotgun. And things like that. But again, Resident Evil 5, great game. I love the setting and how the story took place in Resident Evil 5. But I didn't feel like it was scary. But it was kind of like that. I don't think Dead Space had come out yet, right? Did this?
The first one was probably out
around that time, right?
within the year on either side. It could be a year before, a year after, but I want to say from RE5, Dead Space was also around that time,
Right.
2008 maybe.
And I remember playing Dead Space scared as shit because I
Dead
couldn't
Space,
take a break
yeah.
because I didn't know if I was safe at any given moment, and
That
that was great.
Dead Space fucked me up.
Right. And then Dead Space 2 ended up going the RE4 route where it was scary, but you had your moments of where okay, you can relax here. Like, this is a down moment. Take a breather and go fuck shit up. And go, go.
Yeah.
Because it did go a little bit more actiony. And I keep noticing this trend. But again, let me just go over the numbers
Sure.
and I'll bring it to that point. So, Resident Evil 5 had sold 13.3 million. And RE6, even though RE6 was not critically well received, even by fans, it still sold 11.5 million. So not too bad. It still sold more than Resident Evil 4, a little bit less than Resident Evil 5. Now, these numbers are great, but Resident Evil 6 had hurt the franchise. It gave the franchise a bad image now. Whereas Resident Evil wasn't associated with quality, it had gone too far off from its horror roots and had gone way too much into the action genre, right?
Right.
It became just another third-person shooter.
It was like Fast and the Furious type of vibe. Like it had
Yeah.
that type of tone.
Right.
Like by the fifth, towards the fifth one.
Yeah.
Towards the
Which again, I didn't mind as much, but to be honest, I'm gonna be honest with all the listeners. I did not play RE6, but just looking at it and seeing what everyone had said and looking up your reviews and even full playthroughs online on YouTube, it didn't seem like the Resident Evil that I was used to.
Right,
at least with 4, I think 4 and 5 were at least a good balance for me. But either way, after they had taken a break, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's reimagine, go back to see what made Resident Evil. Because at the end of the day, Resident Evil, it's its own game. It's one of the very few franchises out there that hits that mark of horror and action that I think a lot of people like.
Yeah.
So that Resident Evil 7 is the first time that they had gone first person. So you are no longer a third person character, seeing the character on screen and then aiming your little, reticle up to the monster. Now you're playing everything in first person, and it had gone and then made the story smaller. You're in this bayou. You're fighting against this creepy ass family that has some connection to the Umbrella Academy, or sorry, the Umbrella Corporation, and Umbrella Academy.
I was like, oh, right on.
The monkeys there. But it was a great return to form. It sold 7.8 million. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at the wrong number. No, it sold 8.5 million. So, again, great return to form, well received. But I think the horror element is what held it back. Because, again, some people, the scarier you make a game, the less accessible it is to people who want to play that franchise.
Right.
Because not everyone has that same, mentality. Some people don't like to watch scary movies or scary shows because they can't handle that. It's just not for them. But they want to play that.
But there is a sprawling like horror community. You know what I mean? Like that like the horror community.
Oh yeah, definitely.
About movies is huge.
No,
right?
huge, right?
But what you don't see is budget. You know what I mean? So if they're gonna make it scarier, they got to bring the budget down.
Right.
Because they can't be putting all their eggs in one basket because horror is a niche.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But either way, Resident Evil 7, great game. Well, it has some issue at the end. Like, it's not consistent. It's not a consistent game, but the vision that they had set out to go back to their horror roots worked. So
okay.
Could
you elaborate on the consistency thing?
Okay. Resident Evil 7, when you're playing, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't played it because I really believe everyone should play Resident Evil 7. Yeah. Like, I think it's like Resident Evil 4. It changes the franchise, right?
I've never played it.
In the beginning, you fight this family, and you're in this bayou old house setting, right? Everything's fine. There's great moments. I want to elaborate too much, but then eventually you get to this area where you find an oil tanker, and you go into these caves where it loses some of that horror element and just becomes another shooter. Shooter, exactly. Okay. A little bit, not a lot, because again, you're not that overpowered in 7. In 7, you're very depowered, so that's why you have that sense of tension because you may or may not kill that guy,
right?
Or that monster that you're fighting. But again, but in the beginning where you have to go through this entire house, this house had like walkways and secret corridors and secret trap rooms and all these great things that really gave a huge sense of how big this house was.
I played the demo of 7, so I'm definitely gonna go back and pick it up because
right.
I've been wanting. It's been on my list forever.
But eventually there's a pivot in the game where you leave that bayou area. And then you go to like some caves and like an oil tanker that's stuck in the swamp somewhere. And again, it just loses some of that magic that made that bayou area really intriguing and really scary because of the unknown. And then it became a little bit more generic towards the end. But again, it didn't ruin the whole experience. It's still a really fun experience when you play the whole thing. And again, well received by everyone, but look at this number. Like, it didn't sell as much as Resident Evil 4, 5, or 6, either of them. And 6 was considered the worst one in the franchise. It still outsold it by at least 5 million already.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
At that point. Yeah.
And then Resident Evil went back to remake Resident Evil 2, which is in the one with Raccoon City. Went back to remake Resident Evil 3, which is Nemesis. And Resident Evil 2 was sold really well, especially for an old game that was remade with today's graphics and with today's modern sensibility. Because again, Resident Evil 2, the PlayStation 1 version, does not play like the remake. The remake, they took into consideration how modern games are played today, with modern controls and modern shooting mechanics. Right. And because of that, Resident Evil 2 came out, sold 7.8. Resident Evil 3 came out a year afterwards and only sold about 3.5. So you see a massive drop. Now, Resident Evil 3 wasn't as big as 2. And everyone knew that because even the PlayStation version, it wasn't as big. Okay. Because it had been done in, I think, a less development time. Okay. But again, they kept it true to the game. They didn't add anything. They just made Resident Evil 3, but with, again, the same treatment they gave Resident Evil 2, remake the game with today's sensibilities, modern controls, and modern graphics. But either way, my point is that it seems like Resident Evil 8 or Village is going back to the action roots. And I wanted to go ahead and just read a couple of reviews of some of the prominent, review sites out there for games, and just to see a little bit of what they've been saying about Village, which again, all has been positive, but they all acknowledge that 7 was a return to form to horror. 8 is the halfway point where let's keep some of that horror, but go back to action. Okay. Let me go ahead and read a review by Phil Horshaw from GameSpot. He gave it a 9.0. Resident Evil 7 was an excellent return to the horror underpinnings of the franchise, but cunningly altered with new ideas and a new perspective. Similarly, Village isn't an intelligent reintroduction of the best action elements of Resident Evil, though it captures some of the same things that made RE7 such a fresh of breath air. Or maybe rancid, stale, mold-filled air, but in a good way. Village evolves to become its own unique creature. It makes you wonder what beautifully twisted fiend Resident Evil might mutate into the future. So again, it praises that 7 was a return to form, and 8 is a little bit of a deviation from that formula, but making something new out of it. Something new, yeah. But then, like, again, doesn't that feel like RE4 then? Where
sounds like the sequel trilogy.
Exactly. Tristan Ogilvie. Tristan.
Ogilvie?
Tristan from IGN gave it a 9 as well. Roaming the streets of Resident Evil Village is like visiting a disturbing and deadly Disneyland, where every attraction is a house of horrors. I just got a big thrill out of reveling in its frenzied violence as I did retracing my steps through the gradually revealed recesses of its sizable village setting to uncover the darkest story secrets of its monstrous main cast. Boss fights are a bit of a letdown, but the great variety of enemies throughout keeps things tense, especially in hardcore mode. The fact that it's very much a throwback to the fast-paced action of Resident Evil 4 also means that it largely takes a step back from the slow burn scares of Resident Evil 7 at excellent opening hours, which may well disappoint those who prefer more psychological dread to blowing off heads. But if you have an itch for an action-heavy survival horror, then Resident Evil Village will scratch it like a fistful of Lady Demetrius' freakish fingernail, which is that tall lady. Nice. I don't even know how you say your name. I think it's Demetrius or Demetriuscus.
Dimitrescu?
Who knows? Even people online have been having a hard time saying her name because she's had such a weird name.
I gotta hear it said once at least.
Leon Hurley from Games Radar gave it a 3.5 out of 5, which I think was the lowest score from when I've seen all the aggregated sites of all the big name sites of all the reviews. They were probably the lowest score. Despite some of the issues I've mentioned I've enjoyed Resident Evil Village. I'm on the second playthrough already, and it's still good. If I'm sound like I'm down on it, it's in a few places. It's only because the excellence of some parts only highlights some of the more ordinary moments. The first half is great. The characters are interesting throughout, and exploring the unraveling locations never gets old. It's only the later half where things start to alternate between some good bits, some fumbles, and at least one moment of, oh my god, what? Shark jumping X's that wouldn't look out of place in a Fast and Furious trailer. It feels more like a fun but flawed mix between the camp X's of older games and the more modern feel of the last installment. One thing that kept popping into my head while I was playing was just remembering how good Resident Evil 7 was. I recently completed another playthrough in preparation for this, along with some revelations in Veronica, just because. And number seven's reverse home invasion slasher terror is still up there as one of the greatest horror games of all time. Resident Evil Village is an enjoyable, occasionally silly monster hunt that's entertaining, but almost completely resets all the incredible work Resident Evil 7 did to reinvent the series. And again, haven't played the game. I'm excited to play it because either way, it sounds like it's going back to kind of how RE4 was, right?
Yeah.
Where it still has that horror element, but you still have the action to go along with it as the game progresses. And again, I can't help but make the point, or that a lot of people make, is that if you make it less scary, it's gonna sell more copies, because there's people who are just put off from horror, the genre itself, because they don't want to feel that terror. But if you make it less scary, more actiony, then people are more willing to, fork down their cash to play it.
And what sucks about that is if you make it more action oriented, you alienate
the people who like the horror part of it.
The people, the diehard community, because you're appealing to the people who could buy it or not.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's kind of an unfortunate byproduct of that.
And again, I see the goods of both arguments. Like, I love Resident Evil 7's return to horror. That was freaking great. I hadn't played a scary game like that since Dead Space, right?
Right.
And I like my horror in a specific way. I want to be able to have horror, but also fight back. I don't like the horror games where you're just running from the monster and you're trying to get to the end of the game without having to die, right?
There's been a couple good experiences with that,
right?
Like a game where you're just not ready to fight. I think I liked Alien Isolation.
Right, something like that, where you kind of have to. But in the beginning, you're just hiding. But again, part of me also likes the action elements of the Resident Evil series too. I have always liked the shooting mechanics of Resident Evil. I've always liked the bosses. That was a big thrill for me. I remember buying Resident Evil Mercenaries, which was the 3DS version of Resident Evil, right? And that did not have a story. It was just. Did you ever play a Resident Evil Versus with 5 or 6?
I don't know.
It was just like a time-based trial. You try to kill as many things you can, and then you play as different characters, and then each of them would have different abilities and different weapons.
Yeah. And then you would go and it was like a co-op thing. You go
exactly.
into like a stage, and it was like a horde mode type of situation.
Exactly. Yeah. Resident Evil Mercenary was just that. It wasn't even a story. It was just stages with enemies, and I sunk hundreds of hours on the bus just playing Resident Evil Mercenaries. Because that's how much I love the action that Resident Evil presented in those games.
It was well done.
Exactly. I love the 3D action. I love punching zombies and then setting up a combo and then shooting with the shotgun. And then try to conserve my ammo to, keep going for a better run, higher scores and things like that. So again, when I played Resident Evil 7, that was like, oh shit, this is what it means for Resident Evil to be back to horror, right? And I like I mentioned, I love the reinvention of it. I didn't expect for 8 to go back to RE4. You know what I'm saying? Where it's more action mixed with horror, which I'm, again...
At least this quickly.
Exactly, this quickly. I'm more than down to play that, because if it sounds like another copy of Resident Evil 4, I'm down for that, because I freaking love Resident Evil 4. I love the action and the horror mixed in there, but are we just seeing another repeat of what had happened before? Are we going back from horror back to the action to the point where it'll get to actiony, and then they'll have to go back to form?
Intolerable action. I had a thought while you were kind of laying down your point, and it's what if these games are so replayable, even the first one.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think those sales numbers of the remakes, where the remake almost made as much as a new release. Definitely. Not just a new release, a well received new release.
Yeah.
Like Resident Evil 7.
That's nothing to sneeze at. There's something in the millions.
Exactly. So like our RE2 sold when it came out, sold 7.8. RE7 I'm sorry, RE2 remake did almost 8 million, and
Mm-hmm.
RE7 did 8.5 million. So it's they're only like 0.7 million,
Yeah.
700,000 away from each, or 700,000 units away from each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll stop beating a dead horse on that. But what I'm trying to say is the the replayability is so prevalent
Yes.
that what if the style of Resident Evil 7, when you want that style, you just go back to 7.
Right.
And what if the point is to be able to find different balances between survival, horror,
Right.
action, you know what I mean, all of that stuff. Even like corniness versus earnestness,
Right.
and playing it straight. Like a lot of 7 was played straight. 6 was corny as hell.
Corny as hell.
And 5 had
Fast and
some,
Furious of the franchise.
exactly. 5 did too. Five had some corny moments. I don't remember liking Nemesis too much.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember, I liked 2 a lot more than Nemesis.
I got into Resident Evil the franchise at 4. I did
At
not
4.
play 1, 2, or 3 in the PlayStation.
I did play 1 and 2 at friends' house. I had people
Yeah.
bring them over, let me borrow them. I had the dual disc for 1,
Mm-hmm.
where you play 1 disc, and I think you played as Chris. The next disc you play as Claire.
Don't you remember back in the day when you would get more than one disc? Oh wow, there's a lot of game here.
Yeah, you got Pokemon Red and Blue.
But either way, like again, none of this sounds bad. I'm just pointing out just gonna go back to that same, that same pattern, or
Is
do
it
you
a
think,
cycle?
or are they trying to find a good balance of horror and action so they could sell them? Again, it's a business. At the end of the day, they want to sell the maximum amount of units.
I guess that's what they're trying to crack. Or if I were Capcom or the developers, I'd be trying to crack what is the proper mixture. We've had so many entries. What is the proper mixture of horror and like serious horror? Where you're actually on the edge of your seat.
And a power fantasy, like
and exactly, and then you being empowered in the game itself, where you can fight back. You're not outgunned.
right.
And then on the back end, how much money do we make? So they're looking
Right.
they're trying to find the perfect algorithm of it sounds like that, but who knows?
Who knows? Because they've even had spin-offs where it was straight up like SOCOM or Call of Duty. They had Operation, I think Operation Raccoon City. I'm not sure, but they had a spin-off where it was straight up just a run and gun shooter.
Yeah.
And you gotta take on a bunch of monsters.
You were like a special forces guy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. What the fuck was that called?
Let me find it, but
Yeah.
let me see.
I remember playing it. Resident Evil, was it Revelations?
No, Revelations was the 3DS one.
That's the 3DS one.
That's the one where you play as jail and you're in a oil tanker.
Right.
That was fun though. I love that game. That had great.
And there was Code Veronica too. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
While you look for that, did you ever play a game called Carrier on the Dreamcast?
Carrier.
Yeah,
On the Dreamcast. What was that about?
It was like a Resident Evil 1 clone, but you're on an aircraft carrier, and instead of zombies, there were these plants that would take over bodies. And
That's cool.
It was fucking dope, man. But it probably, I played it as a kid. For some reason, every time I think about Resident Evil, I think about Carrier.
I want to play that.
Yeah,
like a Little Shop of Horrors, but in space, in the planes.
It's very Resident Evil adjacent.
It was called Umbrella Corps.
Umbrella Corps?
Yeah.
Was there another one?
There was another one.
That?
No, yeah, there was another one. There was Umbrella Corps, and there was also, give me 1 second, Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Okay, Operation Raccoon City.
Those are the ones that were more, again, throughout the horror elements out of the way, it was just run and gun.
Weren't there sequels to some of the spin-offs? Didn't Code Veronica have a Code Veronica too?
No, not Code Veronica. But there's been a lot. Trust me, Resident Evil's franchise has gone around. They have lots of spin-offs. They did Revelations 2, which no one really played. I don't even ever hear anyone talk about it.
That's what I was talking about.
But which I understand because I played Revelations 2. It's shitty.
Yeah.
Like it's not good. So it's kind of hard. But I'm glad that Village is more of what I like. Again, if they're gonna make RE4 again, or again, it's its own thing. Yeah. But they're saying that it feels similar to that game than it does to Resident Evil 7, right?
I hear you.
I love both. I don't care. Give it to me. But I also would want to see where, like, what if we did just 2 spin-offs then? Or, because again, this franchise is not adverse to spin-offs. They spin off so many different games that are just stupid as hell, right? Yeah. Why don't you make a horror line of Resident Evil games and then your more action-y line? You know what I'm saying?
I hear what you're saying, and then kind of a spectrum in between.
Yeah, and then that's a good palate cleanser for people. Like, hey, every couple of years you'll get a more action Resident Evil, and then every couple of years you'll get a more like horror centric one.
Yeah. I don't know. It seems kind of like that's what they're doing, but also it seems like what if like what would you think about Resident Evil developing kind of a Final Fantasy, adopting a Final Fantasy model where every
Right,
game is
everyone's
standalone?
just super different and just became its own thing.
Because starting from four, it's kind of they're kind of standalone. Starting from four, they're
And
all kind of standalones.
a little bit, but they're all connected, and the story's
They're all
super convoluted. It just makes even no
yeah
sense at
yeah.
times. But it's because I mean, if you're a Resident Evil fan, you'll like the story, but it's not like a good story.
That's not the point. The Resident Evil is the
I
moment.
saw Wesker punch a no, I saw Chris punch a boulder while fighting Wesker on a volcano. You know, at the end of 5,
Yeah.
like this is stupid as hell, but I'm here for it.
Yeah, yeah. But what I mean though is like where they, what if every game? Do you think it would benefit the franchise if every game introduced a new cast of characters,
Right,
new type of monster, new location,
and then bring it into the fold,
or even a new play style?
Yeah,
You go from being a tank camera or tank controls to being
first person shooter, third person shooter.
And what would be tank controls today? How would you make tank controls work today? Is it possible? Like they'd be like
Yeah,
a really cool thing to see, or a rail shooter even.
yeah,
Like what?
which they've done.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah,
But like just to introduce these, so every game it's a standalone thing, experimenting and exploring um, mechanics,
oh yeah,
gameplay styles, blah blah blah. But the factors that they must have to be a Resident Evil game, it's got to have some type of Raccoon City thing.
Yeah.
Or not all of them have it though.
yeah,
Not all, right. The first one didn't have
No.
Raccoon City. Raccoon City was the closest city.
Yeah.
You weren't okay. So let me take that back. It's got to have some kind of connection to Umbrella.
right.
Then
'Cause
survival.
For the longest time when you're I know you haven't played 7, but like
No.
7 doesn't feel connected to Resident Evil at all until the very end where they finally
The
tie
very
it to the rest of the franchise.
Right. But that's cool too.
Yeah,
that's
I
cool
like
too.
that.
It's immersive. You forget that you're playing a Resident Evil game like you're so familiar with the Resident Evil games. It's a totally isolated experience. What's happening in those games is happening to the entire world.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you can literally pick anyone,
Mm-hmm.
and
And that could be your first entry to the franchise.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Like what happens if you were at a power plant and the you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty.
And
endless.
Tucson, Arizona, and guess what? There's
Yeah.
these zombies that come out of the ground, and you have that movie. What's that movie called? Where the things come out of the ground?
Tremors.
Tremors, exactly.
Oh, I love that movie.
But again, like either way, I just love that Resident Evil is that malleable. It could always transform itself and reinvent itself in different ways. And again, I'm excited to play 8. But like I told you, like I don't want to play 8 now. I've always felt like Resident Evil is a good Halloween game. I'm gonna buy it in October because that's when I'm gonna want to.
That's where you're gonna want to play it.
Because everything's gonna be with that tone, and I want to play that in in the scary season. That's what happened with 7. I didn't beat 7 came out in January of that year. I played like a good portion of it, but I just completely dropped it and picked it up in Halloween or around the October, and that's when I beat it. I beat it around October.
Feeling festive.
Exactly.
That's great.
Which I always find funny that they release these horror games like in the beginning of the year where it's all spring, it's all nice outside.
Yeah.
Hey, let's give you some fucking dark shit.
Yeah. That's so that you could return all the games you didn't want that you got for Christmas.
And pick up Resident Evil.
Pick up Resident Evil. That's how they do it.
And I just find it weird that like you mentioned, Resident Evil's had so many spin-offs. It had even almost like an MMO where you play on PS2 online with other people.
Oh, I didn't know.
And then they had like a tank, a heal, like they had these classes and you try to play the game. I don't remember what the name of the game was, but I think it was Last Stand, Resident Evil Last Stand or something like that.
Okay.
But either way, again, Resident Evil is not adverse to making several spin-offs. They've done spin-offs that make no sense, and they just do it because again, Resident Evil, you just slap that name on it.
Yeah,
But it's weird that Capcom does that with Resident Evil, but when it comes to games like Monster Hunter, no, there's just one Monster Hunter. We're not doing any spin-offs. Like Monster Hunter is always going to be Monster Hunter. They'll have those certain IPs. Well, they'll never make something different with it. Take for example Street Fighter. It's always been a fighting game. They've never done anything else. They never made like a combat brawler.
That's not true. The first Resident Evil was a beat 'em up.
Wait a minute. The first Resident Evil. Oh, the first Street Fighter.
The first Street Fighter.
Yeah, yeah.
The first Street Fighter
yeah,
was beat 'em up.
No, but it never went back to that ever again.
That's
you know what I'm
true.
saying? And they could do it too. You can make new Street Fighter beat 'em ups if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But they've only
definitely.
again like it feels weird with Capcom with some franchises they will try to experiment anything, throw shit at the wall, see what sticks, right? But then certain IPs that they own, they're like, no, we have to treat this as secretly as possible.
That's interesting. Same thing with like Lost Planet. Like they never even revisited that stuff. That was like a legit franchise.
Yeah, I liked Lost Planet.
The second one did not flop, did it? The second
one
did fine.
The second one did fine. I think the third one didn't do as much as they wanted to, and then they stopped. But that was a different Capcom at that time.
That makes sense because I didn't even know there was a third one.
Right. Capcom today is hitting on all cylinders. Resident Evil's doing great. Monster Hunter's in the best place it's ever been before. It sold. It became introduced to a worldwide audience, right? Mm-hmm. Monster Hunter was always big in Japan. Now it's huge everywhere. Like it sold way more copies being on consoles because you gotta remember Monster Hunter for the longest time was played on portable systems. It was always on PSP for several years, and then the 3DS again. It was always like a Pokemon, right? It was a portable franchise. Mm-hmm. Once they made Monster Hunter World and was on the PS4 and the Xbox, that's when it blew up. And then suddenly the whole world got introduced to what Monster Hunter was.
Wow. It was World was the first one that was console, right?
There had been one other console game, but that one doesn't really count. Okay. But yeah, the World will be like the main. This is our first console game that will introduce everyone to this franchise, and it worked. World sold like 68 million copies.
Jesus.
It's Capcom's highest selling franchise now. Instantly became its biggest hit.
I have a problem with Capcom's like franchises, like the Dead Rising stuff. They're inconsistent.
Yeah,
that's true. They have these entries that are fucking so good and so like solid. Mm-hmm. And then as you know, 2 or 3 entries later, there's a inconsistent like quality, inconsistent storytelling, down to the voice acting. You know what I mean? And then if you think of any Capcom,
Devil May Cry
had.
Devil May Cry was good, turned bad, and now it's back to form again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Do you think they do that to manipulate the market?
I feel like it's different. It's just different directions. It seems like right now there's times in Capcom where it seems like they're just shitting things out just to sell, and letting the quality slip, and then someone will take over. A new president or a new leadership takes over, and like, no, we need to do back to quality, build an engine. Let's have all our games run on this engine, and then build it from there. And that's where you get Monster be reinvented. Because again, you gotta remember, Monster Hunter was on the portable system. There's some elements of those game mechanics that will not apply to console. Like console has more range and more flexibility. Like in the PSP and the 3DS versions, every time you go to a different part of the map, it was a loading screen. Like it was almost like Outriders. It was like squares connected by an invisible wall, and then you go through the wall and you start loading to the next screen, right? But in with World, they made an entire 3D environment where you can go. Remember when I took you to that tree? You had this whole environment of the tree, and I told you can go all the way up that tree, and it's an entire world in its own.
That's cool. I gotta get into that because it was fun the day we were playing Monster Hunter
while we're waiting for Outriders.
We were waiting for Outriders to work.
Dude, it's for the service to stop having issues.
Yeah. That was the first time I ever tried playing it. I created a character before and I played a little bit before, but it wasn't like that. Yeah. I just kind of played it and I was like, it's kind of slow. But I didn't realize that it wasn't until I played it with you that I realized that it's slow because you have to time your attacks.
It's made on purpose.
There's a rhythm.
There's a rhythm to it.
Yeah, like the weight of the weapon, you feel it in your attacks. You feel it like as they're swinging it. You know, like you have to hit it at the right time and stuff. So I understand it now, but I didn't get it at first. I was kind of like, this is slow.
Again, like I had played Monster Hunter before when I was younger, and I didn't get it. And at some point, it clicked. I think it clicked in college where I just bought I was like, okay, let me just give it the new Monster Hunter. Let me give it a try, and it just clicked. But again, it's a lot easier if you have someone to introduce you to that series because Monster Hunter has a lot of stuff that they've built. You're talking about 2001. They've built so many mechanics into that game for almost 21 years now that it's like they don't do a good job of explaining some of the things to beginners. You kind of need like a YouTube or social media account to tell you some of the nuances of what the game does. Yeah, you have to. And then you start to appreciate it a little bit more because again, this 20 years that they've been building this franchise, like from entry to entry, and they'll introduce new mechanics, take some away, things that didn't work, or things that do work. You know.
Yeah.
It just reiterates on itself and over and over and over.
That's kind of what the boldness. I do appreciate the boldness that they have in reinventing a tried and true method.
Right.
Like that takes some fucking balls.
Balls.
Man. Like
something that fucking Activision has no fucking balls. They would never do shit like that.
No.
Because they would rather just sell the same shit. And
it's been the same game until Warzone came out. Most Call of Duties were the same. They felt the same to me.
Yeah, because I think the battle royale genre just shook things up. People didn't want just regular team deathmatch.
They had to evolve or die.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And to their credit, again, like
they did it well.
Yeah. Like again, they're a soulless corporation, but the people who are making the actual game do a really good fucking job at it. Yeah. Anyways, I'm excited to play Resident Evil. Hopefully, maybe in October. Maybe with all the hype, I might just get it sooner just because I want to see what everyone's talking about. You know, that always happens. But more than likely, I'm probably going to play it in October. Well, let us know what you think about Resident Evil. Do you feel like it's going to actually? Do you think that the next entry, whether it's Resident Evil 9 or a different spin-off game, will it make it even less horror? Are they going to go back to horror? Are they going to, give it off? Maybe it's like the, what's it called? Sorry, I'm trying to think of a good franchise where like you have maybe it's like Final Fantasy where every game does its own thing and they stand on its own, but they're not all.
Kind of the way Metal Gear too.
Right.
Yeah, Metal Gear kind of adopted something. There's threads throughout it.
Yeah, definitely.
But you start playing as different protagonists and
different protagonists, different things get introduced, but all part of that same whole.
Yeah.
Anyways, let us know in the comments below. Rob, what's your topic?
My topic, I would like to discuss. I didn't put as much thought as you did. That was a great topic, man. But I just wanted to discuss Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I wanted to, talk a little bit about the strengths, a little bit about the issues that I had with it, and then I wanted to see what you thought about it.
Okay.
But I really dug it. The Captain America franchise and in the Marvel movies is probably my favorite franchise of them.
Surprisingly.
Yeah, well, I mean, I always liked them. I always liked them in the way, I guess, in the way a lot of people like Superman and Cyclops and like the leaders of the teams always get the short end of the stick.
But again, they haven't done a good. I mean, they've done some good Superman stories, but the older ones, but that hasn't been done right in modern day. Yeah. Cyclops hasn't been done right. They could have gone.
But they nailed it with.
No, yeah, that's why I love that Chris they nailed Evans. Cap. They nailed Cap and they found the perfect actor for that character.
Yeah. It really mattered that they nailed it. That he could share a scene with Robert Downey's Iron Man and not feel like he was being outacted. Not feel like he was so earnest.
So good.
Yeah, he was so earnest.
And remember, like they casted Chris Evans and like the guy from Fantastic Four.
Yeah,
that
the guy from Not Another Teen Movie.
Not Another Teen Movie. That guy is gonna be
the
Captain
guy with
America.
The whipped cream on his dick.
Like that guy's gonna be Captain America, and to his credit, he's
carried. A good actor.
You know how they always say like, I'm gonna just throw an anime term at you, like the Goku and the Vegeta of a franchise, the two main good characters. Yeah. That's what you got with Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. They were the Goku and Vegeta that held this franchise.
I definitely think Thor has if they held the franchise up, I definitely think Chris Hemsworth's Thor is kind of evolving in.
Now he is,
but he's evolving in tangent with the absurdity of the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if you look at Thor, Thor is the meter for ridiculousness. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that's fucking great. You know, and I think that of course it should be Thor. But so let's go back to Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
So my favorite Marvel movie, the one that I walked away from thinking that was a masterpiece, was Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier. I was with you when we watched that.
Yeah, we watched that together. But yeah, I love that movie. I think that's in my opinion, it is the perfect Cap movie.
Right.
It shows that he's not just a blind patriot. He's actually like the values of what he considers, patriotism and being an American, whatever. What he considers freedom to be matters to him,
And that should matter to everyone, not just whether you're one group or another group.
Sure. And he's really like, when he sees what SHIELD is doing, he's like, I used to fight the guys that used to do this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So I really like that. I really
And
enjoyed it. It was so true to the comics as far as him not being pompous, being righteous but not pompous. Like it was just so well done.
and for Anthony Mackie to have to step into those shoes was a pretty tall order. I'm not saying that he
Oh
doesn't
yeah,
have the acting chops for it.
it would have been a tall order if it was Sebastian Stan who would have been Cap.
Anyone
You know
really?
what I mean? Like if they would have given the shield to Bucky,
Yeah.
it would have been a tall order. It was a tall order for Wyatt Russell, man.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody fucking liked him, right? So it picks up at the end of Endgame. If you haven't seen it, it picks up at the end of Endgame, after Mackie has the shield. He gives up the shield. He doesn't feel that he's ready to be Cap, and
Which I always found a little weird. His reasoning for it, like of giving up the shield, like I understand it. Like it's a big responsibility. Some people don't want to be in that limelight.
Yeah.
And again, I can relate to that, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to put yourself out there, especially to be able to carry that symbol, like you mentioned. I just wish we got a little bit more, like personal interaction of why he didn't want to do it. You know what I'm saying? Or
they waited really late
yeah.
to do it, but he does kind of say it in the episode where they have, I forgot which episode it was, but where he has the session with Bucky and his therapist, where he says,
I think it was episode 2.
I don't expect you guys to understand. I don't expect you or Steve, like he's talking to Steve,
right?
Too. And I get why he'd make that decision, and I think in a way it's supposed to be that you don't get it.
Right.
You know what I mean? In a way, it's supposed to be like, why would you not want to be Captain America?
Which is great because that gives him a character. Like, hey, not everyone wants to be.
Well, it expresses pain. There's a pain in there. You know what I mean? And it's like there's something in his background. And you just use your imagination.
Yeah.
There's something that he experienced, being from the South, that told him he shouldn't be Captain America. That if Captain America told you you're Captain America, he takes a shield. And he's like, nah. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of shows you that, and then as the series progresses and they show you what his
upbringing was, his family.
Or not just that, his relationship to the shield.
Right.
What he thought about it, as him and Bucky talked about it more,
Because they definitely clashed on how they felt about the shield.
Yeah.
Bucky definitely had his point of view about the shield and about what Steve had said. And definitely Falcon has his point of view, which, I love the dichotomy between those two characters, and I love their friendship because, again, Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan just play off with each other so greatly.
Thinking of Winter Soldier, where Sebastian Stan was at, and then thinking of him now,
right?
If you look at what Sebastian Stan is doing, Steve was the sweet old man, right? Steve was practically playing Stan Lee when he was like, when even as a young man, when he looked young, he was practically like just some nice guy, right? If you look at Bucky, he's seen more shit. He had to go through the whole Winter Soldier thing. He's kind of playing like a curmudgeon, like an old grumpy man. And you look at this, 30-something-year-old actor, and he's playing like, you're looking at him. He's playing an 85-year-old grouch, and it never registered harder, or you never got to really notice that. Like in Civil War, he was coming out of the mental stuff, right?
Right.
In Infinity War, he was coming out of the treatment he got at Wakanda,
right?
In Endgame, he's just coming back, and I'm back. You know what I mean? So
and also Civil War. That's when you got a lot of screen time with him.
He did get a lot of screen time, but he was just coming out of the whole the
he's remembering that he killed a bunch of people.
Yeah.
He was dealing with his demons.
He's still grieving. He's still in like a grief process. You know what I mean? But seeing him now, like in the show, I really liked what they did with him, where they show him, developing, and he's becoming. You see elements of what you saw in First Avenger,
right?
Like his sense of humor coming back,
right?
The charisma coming back, that like elements of Bucky Barnes versus
his strength, because we had seen his strength, but you had not seen his vulnerabilities.
Yeah. So I really liked what they did there. So overall, the show felt like a character study,
right.
With these two guys in the head. We got a little bit of Sharon Carter. We got a little bit of Wyatt Russell. We got
Baron Zemo.
Baron Zemo was fucking great. That left me wanting more, and I felt like his storyline was left unresolved.
I had read a good article.
Feel satisfied.
I had read a good article. I don't know if it was IO9 or some other article, but it might have been Hollywood Reporter. But Marvel had a problem where it kept killing off villains, and that you would never develop them, and that Loki was the only villain that was well developed throughout the franchise. And now that in WandaVision and also in Captain America and the Winter Soldier,
Yeah.
you're not killing off these villains anymore. You're actually helping them develop over time and make them more interesting.
And that's how it was in the comics back in the day. It's like these villains were part of the cast. You know what I mean? Like the Fantastic Four would not always be fighting Doctor Doom.
Yeah, it was like wrestling. You will have your hero. Was it your baby faces,
your
right?
baby face and your
and
heel.
then the people who would go to the other side, then they became a heel, or and then they had a redemption.
Yeah, but they would deal with these villains like just, hey, I'm fighting this one guy, and I saw you have this technology that I might be able to use. Help me out, and I'll forget you did that last thing. Like it happened with the Lizard and Venom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Spider-Man was dealing with that. So it was, they were part of that world. They weren't just one and dones.
Exactly.
And that was a huge problem in the
movies.
Marvel movies. If you look at all the movies, there's rarely a villain that gets killed off that was good, or memorable. I think the most memorable one that got
like
killed
who was
off,
the guy from Ant-Man? You know what I'm saying?
Right? Yeah, he was the prime example of forgettable villain because he was he was a mirror of the hero, and then he got killed off. So it's like it's hard to give a damn about him. But
and then I like the Doctor Strange villain because that was an idea. Dormammu, that
exactly,
and he could still come back. That guy's not gone.
The opposite of what we saw with Ant-Man was Killmonger.
Yeah.
Well, Killmonger was like a developed villain that did get killed off.
Yeah.
But it was just done right. It was just done right.
So you like how Baron Zemo got a chance to shine, and not only is he a bad guy, but he can play with the good guys too.
I like that Civil War was an origin story, essentially.
Right.
Well, essentially, between Civil War and Age of Ultron, you're getting an origin story, and now we saw him become what Zemo is, you know what I mean? Or he always was this guy, But ultimately, I just wanted to share a few thoughts. A couple of things I had a problem with the Carly Morgenthau storyline was a bit. I just had a hard time understanding her motivations, and it wasn't driven home.
I feel like we needed more examples of how the rest of the world felt to understand her point of view. You know what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. It was hard to kind of like see her position, and the fact that she was, if I read it right, she was right. Sam was on her side.
Yeah.
He agreed with her.
He did agree with her. But she had an extremist method of getting that result. And that's where he didn't agree, because again, like you said, there's a lot of real world politics that come into play where decisions get made at the top that don't necessarily translate to the people at the ground level.
Yeah. I thought it was a really good representation too of all the complexities of like the social ramifications of what is it, 4 billion people just showing up. Essentially, you have 4 billion refugees.
Yeah.
Just back. The world had moved on. You know what I mean? And now you got 4 billion refugees.
Like, where do you put, like they said in the movie, like, in the series, like, where do you put that family that used to live at that house? There's a family that's living there now.
They played it for laughs too in Spider-Man when Aunt May says that they thought she was a ghost, or they thought that she was a mistress. Remember
right.
That? They played it for laughs, but here it's like it's great because in WandaVision you see the trauma
of the blip
of returning from the blip. You see that trauma. It wasn't just like you see the funny parts of it in Spider-Man.
Yeah.
You see the triumphant part of it in Avengers. Excuse me. You see the trauma of it and the shock of it in WandaVision.
Yeah.
And then you see the social ramifications
of
this
it
giant event.
Yeah.
Which is so great that they're not just ignoring that event. That was a huge fucking event.
That affected everyone.
Exactly. If it would have happened in the real world, then we'd be dealing for... I mean, look at where we're at now. We're still... If you're not listening to this, on Friday, May 7th, 2021... like we're still kind of on the way out of this pandemic, and we're going to be dealing with this for years, so it was a very real world representation of, people are all going to have different experiences of how they blip back. Some are going to be funny, some are going to be horrifying, some are going to be heartbreaking, you know what I mean, some are going to be heartwarming. So I really I give them credit for that. It's not a one note thing, it's not like
definitely
it's just tragedy. It's like, no, there's a bunch.
Do you like the fact that the director of this show is gonna direct Captain America 4? I'm
glad that there's a Captain America 4.
Me too. I'm glad.
Yeah. I had pacing issues with it. Pacing issues. I think that 5th and 6th episode, if they were edited together in some kind of way, where we can get some of the solace and some of the like the peace that we got in that 5th episode and some of the setup. If we would have gotten that in the finale and more action in that 5th episode, and more drama in the finale, I think there would have been a better balance. I gotta rewatch it. I'm gonna rewatch episode 5 and 6 back to back, because I have a hunch that maybe there's a better flow if you watch it that way.
One thing that I have to criticize, I mean, again, I agree with you. I loved what they did with the characters, especially for Bucky, and what it meant for Sam to hold the shield and to learn what that meant to carry that weight. Not only for himself, but also for the African American community, and what that means, especially the way that they set up in those first 2 episodes. How, I'm the Falcon, people love me, and guess what? He was being mistreated like everyone else, and that's what his sister told her. Like, you think you're more special than anyone? No, you're still gonna be treated like you're still be seen as the other, and you're not. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I thought that drove home a powerful message for a lot of viewers. And like, fuck the guys, the people who said that I don't want race politics in my Marvel show. No, I thought that was a great. I don't even think they did it that hard either. No. Like they did it. They addressed it lightly, but also enough to keep it interesting. You know,
they weren't offensive to. I don't think that it was offensive to anybody the way they delivered it.
No.
Every time he said when he said there are, like, I'm a black man wearing the stars and stripes, and he said that, like, in when he was interviewing or when he was talking to the GRC people. The GRC is like the committee in charge of repatriating people.
Giving the resources back, helping the refugees.
From being from blipping back in. When he said that, he's like, and people just hate me just because I'm wearing this, like, I could feel it right now. I thought that was really powerful. That was really good. There was some stuff that was a little on the nose. There was some stuff that felt a little preachy.
Which I think is part of that pacing issue that they had to wrap it up.
Yeah. I think that I feel like we're in most of these shows. Like, I remember in the Netflix shows, the problem was that there was too many episodes.
They were too long.
Exactly.
Now this was too short.
This was too short.
WandaVision felt great though. I thought WandaVision was a good length for me.
WandaVision, I didn't even mind the finale. I thought the finale was great.
I love the finale. That was great.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I really liked WandaVision from beginning to end. It was so, the mystery, the like, what the fuck is going on here, That was so engrossing,
And then this, and I love that this felt different. Like, this was more meats and potatoes, right? It was more straightforward story, but it gave it its own identity. Well, I mean, obviously, you're not going to have WandaVision, this type of storyline in Falcon and Winter Soldier. You know what you're getting, but still, I love some of the surprising things that came out of it. Like John Walker's character being the U.S. agent. Now, but I remember telling you this when we were playing Outriders, that I don't feel like they did John Walker's character justice in this series. I felt they should have not redeemed them, saved that for later down the line.
Later
maybe even for Captain America 4,
Yeah, where he's the problem. Yeah. I feel like they could have done it in the show within the 6 episodes, but the pacing, he finally fucked up in episode 4.
Yeah.
I think that episode...
And what was the ramifications for that?
Well, if you look at it, it was there was some like, people filming him and stuff like that, and he.
I mean, at the end of the day, he killed a terrorist. I think that's why no one gave a shit. You know what I'm saying?
No, but remember, he got dishonorably discharged.
That's true.
He got dishonorably discharged.
Yeah, court-martialed.
Everything. He got court-martialed. He lost everything. So, I thought that it was there's real-world situations where we have people, with authority, hurting people that don't have it, right? Or even people who might deserve to be, charged criminally, but maybe they don't deserve to die in the street. So
yeah,
I thought I thought it was if we're showing the side of Falcon and what the shield means to him and all and what it means for a black man to wear the stars and stripes the way he said it, I thought it was really cool that John Walker, I think it was important to show his redemption in one fell swoop. I just think that it should have been done sooner. The fall from grace should have been a lot sooner, and then his redemption should have been paced or spread out a little bit nicer. You know what I mean?
But even then, just having John Walker be Captain America in those first couple episodes, I thought was great. I thought it was a great homage to the first Avenger. When the scientist told Steve that bad people seek power, but a good man understands the value of that power. And that's the same issue that Falcon Anthony Mackie had, or sorry, Sam Wilson had, is that he understood that power, but he was a little bit intimidated by that power.
Yeah.
But you have John Walker's character who wants that power, so he can set out to himself to be the Captain America that he thinks everyone should be looking up to.
Yeah.
But he distorted that view of power and ended up, again, not that he was a bad person, because again, he's just a soldier. He was a good soldier, but I think
Steve was a good man.
Was a good man, exactly.
Erskine says or whatever. Yeah. No, it's good. I mean, the fact that we're talking about it in depth the way we are means that there's a lot to dig in there. You know, so it was well done. It was well conceived. You know, all of the moving parts. You know, over the course of the franchise. But I do think that there was some messy moments, and I hope that they clean them up. You know. By the time they get to Captain America 4.
Yeah, or if... Yeah. Now, how do you feel, like, lately, some of the scuttlebutt of the social online media, you know, beyond Reddit and all that stuff, is they're not announcing second seasons to any of these series. It's just it seems to be a one and done, and maybe leading to a movie, right? Yeah. Do you like that? Do you like the aspect where, like, hey, we're not going to get a WandaVision 2. Guess what? WandaVision 2 is going to be Multiverse of Madness. Yeah. And then wherever she goes from there, it's going to be something else.
I think it's great because what that does, the franchise isn't Cap, isn't Iron Man, the franchise is Marvel.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So having these one and done situations like Armor Wars, and then that's done.
And then we move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Because this is a breathing, evolving world.
Yeah. I think that's cool, and I don't think what we saw in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, although there was some moments like that first episode where Sam is taking out Batroc with the helicopters and all that stuff, that could have been on the big screen. That could have been in a movie theater, and I wouldn't have I've seen worse effects in a movie theater. Mm-hmm. But there were also some moments that looked a little janky, you know, later on in the episode. So you could see there was like inconsistent budgetary things, there was inconsistent storytelling things. But I don't think that Falcon and the Winter Soldier character studies like that, like these deep character studies, one, they give background or secondary characters a
time
chance
to shine, which we saw in WandaVision.
And we saw it in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And we started it with Rhodey in Falcon and Winter Soldier, him talking to Sam, which was great. Yeah. You have the two African American sidekicks of the top two Avengers, you know what I mean? Who are gone, and now they have to wear the mantle, you know, at whatever capacity, whether it's Falcon, Cap, or War Machine. Mm-hmm. They're carrying on the legacy, and they're talking about the weight of that. Yeah. That is not easy listening. That's not an easy watch for like a kid. That comes with some explanation, you know. Yeah. So I really think it's I give them credit for that. Like you know, not pretending it's not there. You know right. What I mean, that would be weirder than just like there's real world, you know, problems that these people are dealing with, and that's what made Marvel successful to begin with. Yeah. As far as the second season stuff and leading into one franchise leading into the other. One, we have the fleshed out secondary characters, and two, we have like these deep character studies. You know what I mean? Like straight character studies that are connective that probably wouldn't work as movies, but they're working as these slower burn style stories. We got
Wanda's and Vision's love stories in small bits of other movies, and now we finally get to dedicating an entire essentially a miniseries to who they are, and I thought that was great because again, we don't see that in the bigger movies. I mean, we'll get scenes in there, and that even with a small amount of scenes that Wanda and Vision had, you told a cool little complete story by the end of Endgame, right? And then you had this, and you really dig deep into who these characters are. Yeah.
And just the social elements of it, like at the root of it, WandaVision's a story of mental health, is a woman struggling with mental health, and then at you know
depression.
And then Falcon and Winter Soldier, you have one of the leads who's dealing with, you know, let's call John Walker a main character, right? Yeah. Let's split it into three. So with Sam, you have someone who's dealing with responsibility and coming back from the dead. Family issues, poverty, and dealing with being a black man, being a superhero in today's America or in 2020 something's America.
Yeah, because we don't know what the timeline is kind of.
Yeah, year? I think it's probably 2023 or 2024 at this point. And then we have John Walker dealing with, again, the responsibility of carrying a torch, but also with abuse of power.
Yeah, and what does it mean to follow an order? You know, what does that mean
exactly
to the person and also to the world at large?
And what does power mean to him?
Exactly.
Where power means to him is getting his guy at all costs, even if it's not the right guy.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's just he abused his power when he killed that guy. And then we have Bucky dealing with PTSD. So like, there's some really heavy.
And then we have Sharon Carter, who did the right thing and got screwed,
and still didn't get done right.
Yeah.
Still got done dirty.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of cool layers to these characters, and I can't wait to see where they go with it.
Definitely.
I have my beef with the pacing issues, but it's it's okay. It's okay. It's still it's not like it's not gonna turn me off from the franchise. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's a misstep, and I hopefully they fix it.
Yeah.
It was done during a pandemic. God knows what was going on.
Again, there was rumors that there was going to be a more biological weapon type of storyline, but because with everything that happened, they had to kind of like rewrite that. I think that's what ended up having. You redirect it.
Cool, man. Well, yeah, I just want to say it's kind of a mixed review. If I gave it anything out of 10, it'd be like 7.5, 8 out of 10. It was a fun watch. I watched it every week. Midnight, I was there on Disney Plus. But I did have a couple of gripes, but they got a lot more right than they got wrong.
Right.
Yeah, like by far.
Did they say that Blade was gonna be a movie or a miniseries?
I think it's gonna be a movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't mind a miniseries of Marshall Ali becoming Blade and then having the. Well, I know they're not gonna do that, but I wouldn't mind having a miniseries for a lot of the characters that they're introducing right now.
Yeah.
And I hope we get more because again, like I thought Photon, from WandaVision, I think she wasn't done dirty, but there was no resolution to her character, to her arc.
That's true. And neither with what's her name, with Darcy. She just crashed the car and then she was done. She pieced the fuck out.
Yeah, and again, but again, this is the first time doing these miniseries, and hopefully they'll work on it. But I want to see what happens to these characters, or is everything going to just lead up to a movie at some point?
Well, Monica Rambeau is going to be in the Marvels.
I love that they changed it to the Marvels, dude. I am so excited for that movie.
That sounds great, and I'm hoping Darcy shows up there. I'm hoping she's the guy in the chair.
Right.
That'd be great, because I like her character. I didn't like it at first, and then after WandaVision, I'm like, okay, I like her.
Because you saw her grow in Thor. Well, that character grow like small snippets. She was a student. Then she became a researcher, and now she's a professor.
I love it that she was gone for 7 years.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, where have you been for 7 years? And it's like, I've been a doctor.
Yeah. like Jane's gone. Who do you think has been doing all this?
Yeah.
Well, either way, I love the story as well. I like like you mentioned. There's some issues with the Captain and Winter Soldier series. But overall, I think it did what it wanted to do. It accomplished what it wanted to do, which is
Captain America 4.
Exactly.
I had issues with the Power Broker, Batroc dying in kind of such a unceremonial way. What are they doing with Zemo? What are they, John?
I hope Zemo comes back.
I hope so too, and I hope Zemo and John Walker come back, and I want to see what Julia Louis-Dreyfus's role is.
Madam Hydra.
But I love that.
What does that mean in a Hydra that got supposedly dismantled?
And you're not going to hire Julia Louis-Dreyfus for a cameo.
No.
She's in it. You know what I mean? She's some anti-Nick Fury thing that's going to happen. And I can't wait to see that. Yeah, because if she's in it, it's going to be good for the most part because she's hilarious,
Yeah, she is. Well, that was it for Shoot the Captain. We talked about a little bit about Resident Evil 8. We talked about Captain America and the Winter Soldier now.
Falcon. Oh, yeah, that's true.
No, it ended with, it gave you the title sequence at the end.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I forgot about let us know what you think in the comments below. You guys have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you guys next week.
Peace out, everybody.